Dr. Hilger Gemara. We are on Daf Lamed Aleph, about 8 lines from the top. Rabbi Akiva Ikloi Leginzik. Rabbi Akiva stopped by the city of Ginzik. They had the following shaila of him: Misanin l'shois or ein misanin l'shois. What does this mean? Rashi says, "Kagoin shekibul olav tainis mishesh shois u'melamayla." It was already past noon, and you're makabel, or it was around noon, and you were makabel a tinius for the second half of a day. Umiu, however, loitam klum b'tchila kalayoyim. You happened not to have eaten in the morning, not because you were makabel a tinius for the morning, but you happened not to have eaten, and now you want to be makabel a formal tinius for the afternoon. So umiu loitam klum b'tchila kalayoyim avaloy l'shem tinius neschaven barishoyin. The question is, could it be considered an official tinus if you're a makabel tinus in the middle of the day? Tosfos has a whole shaila on this, so I'm going to run through Tosfos quickly. It's a very easy Tosfos about Misanin l'shois because it's a little bit relevant. Misanin l'shois, Pirsha countries, because you keep love tinus mishay shois ulamayla. You were makabel tinus from noon and on. But you happen not to have eaten anything that day in the morning. But it wasn't a tinus officially, you just happened not to have had a chance to eat. Who you happen not to have eaten anything, but now for the afternoon you want to be makabel upon yourself a formal tinus. What's wrong with that? It's a regular tinus. In other words, he didn't fast purposely in the morning. He had no intention of fasting, and then he decided that he wants to make it into a fast. So Tosfos adds now. So the way we understood Rashi is he never even dreamt of making official tinus. He happened not to have eaten that morning. There was no ticket in that good that morning, so he happened not to have eaten that morning. And now it's already noontime, and he tells him, "You know what? Now I want to be makabel of tinus." Zog Tosfos that can't be what it means. He already made a kabbalah by tinus by mincha the day before on a t'nai. Then if punk tomorrow for some reason I don't have a chance to eat breakfast, then today already now mincha the day before I'm being makabel tinus for the second half of the day. The Eloi Kabbalah Klal, if you were never makabel tinus the day before, you just decide now noontime I haven't eaten anything, so now I want to be makabel tinus. If you were not makabel tinus the day before, loish may tinus. It's never considered to be a tinus. So therefore, if you want it to be considered to be a tinus, you want to be able to say anenu. We're going to soon see that it's relevant to that. That only works if you're makabel the day before. You can't spontaneously decide right now I want to be makabel tinus. The Yosy, and if you don't eat because you want to have that fast, dami lemapucha the molizika. It's like a bag full of air. In other words, it's not officially a tinus. The ein lefarish the Shmuel Amar Milsei leading tefillas tinus, and don't say that Shmuel said it's not considered an official tinus. Lagabe that you don't say the tefillas of a tinus, like you don't say anenu. Aval in tinus, but lamaisa it's considered a tinus. You just don't say the tefillas. Afilu ochal mikol makom also like tinus. It's considered in Shemayim as if you did a tinus. The haba talia. They're totally zebazeh. If it's considered a tinus, you could say anenu. If it's not considered a tinus, you can't say anenu. You cannot split the two; they travel together. Kidemasik hacha halacha misanin l'shois. Our Gemara is going to fear us. Halachas you could be misanin l'shois and v'hamisana misbalel tfilas tinus. And if you fast, you say anenu. So you see, they're totally one and the other. There's no such thing as a tinus that you cannot say the tefillah for. So that's one pshat that Tosfos says. It has to be that you're makabel the day before, which Rashi seems not to say. Rashi seems to say you're makabel it on the spur of the moment. Inami, There's another option. You could say the Mari Naimi b'deloy kibul me'esmel kedemashmer loshen imlach hamluchi. The loshen imlach hamluchi that Tosfos quotes is mashma that you did decide at the spur of the moment, in the middle of the day, that you want to make a tainus. Shmuel says if you don't makabel the day before, it's like a bag full of air. But the boy Shmuel Kabbalah hanu lechatchila. That just means lechatchila. The Yosef, if you sit the tainus and you weren't makabel the day before, domi lemapucha. It's like a mapucha, a bag of air. Hanu she'enim makabel of schar tainus el nikra choite al shatzir atzmai, but in mikomokim nidri neder. It's talking not a tainus. You were mitzvah yourself for no reason, but it's still a valid neder. If you were makabel tainus in the middle of the day, it's called a valid neder, and you're not allowed to eat. Ubi Yushalmi Nidorim Perikodim Mefarish. In the Yushalmi, the Gemara explains this shaila a little differently. What happens if you ate a whole morning and you decided that in the afternoon you want to fast? So till now, Rashi, Tosfos both held it was speaking where you happened not to have eaten in the morning. And the question is, if you finish your day with tainus, is that called a tainus? Yushalmi wants to discuss a half a day fast. Normally, when we think of a half a day fast, we it's from the morning till mincha. Here's a half a day fast that starts midday and goes to the end of the day. Is that considered a valid fast? But also like tainus, and it is a good tainus. The Gomer Hasam, Mimil Seder Rabbi Yochanan, from the words of Rabbi Yochanan, he said, Amar Misadin L'shois, you could fast L'shois. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ha'areni B'tainis, Adin Nechsel, Pirki. What if someone is motivating himself to learn the Perk Mishnayos? So he says, I'm not going to eat until I finish the Mishnayos. That's clearly a half a day tainus. Or Achet Tishalim Pirashti, until I finish the parasha. Rabbi Yochanan holds that is a good Kabbalah's tainus. So you see, a tainus is legit, even though you ate part of the day. Up until now, Rashi and Tosfos holds a tainus is never legit if you ate part of the day. If you didn't eat it all, but you weren't makabel tainus, that could be a tainus. But if you actually ate part of the day, would that be a legitimate tainus? So Rabbi Yochanan clearly holds that you could fast for a half a day, because when you finish your whatever it is you're trying to motivate yourself to do, you're allowed to eat. Or mimilsa Rabbi Yoina, Amra misadin l'shois. You see that from Rabbi Yoina as well. Rabbi Yoina holach l'tzur. Rabbi Yoina went to tzur. V'shama the damach b'rei Rabbi Yosy Aglili. He heard that the son of Rabbi Yosy Aglili passed on. Afal gab the ochal guvna v'shasa maya. Even though that morning he had eaten, aske b'tzoyim kol hu yoyma. He made himself a fast the whole rest of the day. So you have two examples. You have the example of Rabbi Yochanan, where you started fasting, but you'll finish in the middle of the day, and that's called a fast. And you have Rabbi Yochanan example, where you were eating all morning, and then for the afternoon you started to fast. So you clearly see a half a day fast is a legitimate fast, whether you were fasting the first half of the day, or whether you were fasting the second half of the day. Which is not like what Rashi and Tosfos learns over here. Any tainus that doesn't go until the end of the day is not a tainus. The Amar ahaba tainus acha avalevesi v'loy kamishani hainu mishum the mishanim l'shois. The Gemara asked the kasha from Rabbi Yochanan, who said, I'm going to be in the tainus until a certain point of the day, until I get home, not until the end of the day. That seems to say that you could make a tainus that won't go until the end of the day. We have a brisa that says, if the tainus doesn't go till the end of the day, till shkia, it's not a valid tainus. It's a steer. The Balabach Mishani Shaper, the ishtamuti mibenisi of it. Really, Rabbi Yochanan never fasted. It wasn't a fast. It wasn't an official fast. He just didn't want to eat by the base of Yosy, so he told him he was fasting until he got home. But he wasn't looking to make a real fast. He was just looking to get out of eating by the base Yosy. And now is an interesting point. When we fast, the sign posts to the Aguda until when's the Sefer Tainus, it's usually Tzesek Chavim. It might not be 72, but it's either 50 or 60, right? We fast until it says. But the problem is, why would we fast so late? Avalgab darmina beper kama detainis. Kol tainis shokal of kama in tainis. Mashma de b'shkiyas kama sogi. It's mashma from the Gemara that the fast ends by shkia. So why do we fast until the end of the day? We should be able to break our fast by shkia. And there's a significant amount of time between shkia and says. Uhei milin kodim says at the. So why is it that we don't break our fast by shkia? Zaktosis, one reason is lemachtin nafshel sveka. It's not always clear when shkia is. Says is very clear to see. So therefore, because of Suffolk, we might break the fast too early. We don't break our fast by shkia because we're afraid someone could mistakenly break the fast earlier. The Shema Loshen Shaka, maybe when it says in the Gemara, it doesn't mean shkia. It means until the sun is completely down. It means tzeis. However, and this is where it's relevant to us, by a Asar B'Tevis can fall out on a Friday. Mesana be'erev Shabbos, af al gav de paskinon be'ervin halacha mesana umashlim, ein tzarech ledaktek lahamtin atzes hakecham. If you are fasting on an erev Shabbos, you don't have to wait until tzes hakecham. Now, if I remember correctly, Asar B'Tevis, we do wait until tzes to break our fast. Nobody makes early Shabbos on Asar B'Tevis. But Tais is saying is if you fast on a Friday, you don't have to wait until tzes. You're allowed to break your fast by shkia. My sabal of Rabbeinu Tam. A story came to Rabbeinu Tam. Be'echad shosa harba tainiyos. A person who did many tainiyos, but never did he makabel tainiyos the day before by mincha. V'loi kibla me'esma. And the question is, was it a waste of tainiyos, or is it considered a tainiyos? I guess l'gabe what tzchusim he gets, or maybe he owed tanesim. And the question is that he fulfill his responsibility to fast if he never made the Kabbalah the day before. They're valid tanias. His plan was to fast. He may not have articulated it in Mincha with a Kabbalah, but that was his plan. Hainu Gamar Beliboy, Vav Bechlal Nedevleid, the Omar, the Gamar Beliboy, Afal Gav Shaloi Haitzi Besvasov. It's considered a good tanias. V'hadaboy Shmuel V'B'Yochanan Kabbalah, Hainu Lechatchila, you have to make an official Kabbalah Satayas the day before by Mincha, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be a Tayas otherwise. Even if you didn't decide to fast by Mincha time, you first were makabel to fast later on at night, still Yachal Esanis will Espal Tfilas Tainis, Yosy de Nidroi, Ki Ilu Kibal Me'espal. It would be a legitimate Tainis. Achla Hoya B'Yadei Rai Brurasa. Rabbeinu Tam couldn't prove it with certainty, but that's what he felt, that a Kabbalah Tainis even after Mincha is fine. And we mitzvah minamuk for the Kabbalah Mibajovit Tfilas Mincha. If you want to be Makabal Tainis Cholaim or whatever, you should always be Makabal the day before by Mincha. If he fasted on Sunday, if you wanted to be Makabal Tainis on Sunday, you should be Makabal the Tainis on Shabbos, because if he's fasting on Sunday, the Kabbalah the day before would be on Shabbos. He did it. The Kabbalah Tanisha b'Shabbos b'lekayin. So by the kayin he would be Makabal on Shabbos. So it seems like it doesn't mean much Shabbos. It means like by Mincha. So a couple of interesting tidbits of information: whether or not a tainus for half a day counts, whether or not you have to be Makabal the day before, whether or not you can finish by Shkia. Some interesting halachas related to tainus. Zok Gemara weiter. So he asked, "Could you be Misal Shosh or not?" Rabbi Kiva did not have the answer ready to go. How about Kankanim Shloim to Kachavim? And this is why this story was relevant to us. You had jugs that belonged to a goy. Isurin or Mutarin? Are they also to use or are they mutter to use? Again, he didn't have an answer prepared for that. And the third question is, we know Moshe Rabbeinu did Avoda during the Shiva Shemei Meluim, but he wasn't really a Kohen Gadol yet. So what type of begodim did he wear? Again, he didn't have the answer. Zok Gemara also Shol B'Midrash. So they went to the Beis Medrash to see, to see what people have an idea about it. And what he did was, Omri, they said, Hilchasa Misanin L'Shois, you could be Misanin L'Shois. And again, what that means, according to Rashi, means you could spontaneously make up in the middle of the day to fast, even though you've eaten until now. Or according to Tosha, it could mean you were makabel the day before. Or it could mean even if you ate in the morning, you could be makabel. Right? The Tosha had a lot of different options of what this means. Vim hishlem mispalel tfilas tainis. And you could, if you made such a tainis, a part day tainis, you're allowed to say anenu. You're allowed to say the tfilas that you say in the tainis. If you don't use them for 12 months, then you can use them. Rashi says, if you don't use them for 12 months, you don't have to make hagolah, you don't have to soak them in water. You could just use them if they were left unused for 12 months. If you want to use them before 12 months, then you have to do the trick we had earlier. You fill it up with water, you let it sit for 24 hours, and you do that 3 times. But if you wait 12 months, then you don't have to worry. If I remember correctly, if you move into a new house and there's a dishwasher there, the Avoda will be mad to you if you don't use it for 12 months, because it's very hard to catch a dishwasher. So you have to buy new racks and leave it for 12 months or something like that, and then you can use it. That's your theory. You'd have to ask a shaila if that would be relevant. In most cases, when you move the house to the dishwasher, your wife doesn't let you wait 12 months. You have to buy a new one anyway. Anyway, that's the third question. With a white beged. It didn't have a border around it, didn't have a hem or anything. You know why, Dr. Rashi? So no one should be, if he had no pockets, no area to stash away anything of value, so the people wouldn't be choshen for stealing. And the poor Moshe Rabbeinu, what a leader! He was the biggest leader we ever had, and he couldn't even get away with a hem because people would accuse him of stealing. But Zok Rashi, it's not pshat. V'lav milsa. Nigmor hamalacha. When Moshe Rabbeinu did the Avoda b'shiv shemei meluim, there were no supplies around. Everything was already completed. During Avoda, where's there to steal from? When you're preparing the Mishkan, you're building it, you're dealing with gold and silver and wool and all these different things. Maybe you can stash something away. But there was no opportunity to stash anything away during the Shiva Shem Elohim. So that means we need to understand why was it built that way. So Tosfos has different pshatim. One of the pshatim that he says is it was unhemmed, so it looked like it was unfinished. That was to show Klal Yisrael that Moshe Rabbeinu was not going to be the permanent kohen in the Beis Hamikdash. It was just a very temporary situation. Very symbolic. The Mishnah says that kartzanim, which are seeds, and zagim, whenever I touch it, it gets very touchy, sensitive, and it loses. Let's try this again. Okay. Zog the Mishnah, kartzanim and zagim. So there's actually a question what they mean, but Tosfos says kartzanim are seeds, the zagim are the peel of the grape. They are usher if they're new, and if they're old, they're mutter. And we said it's 12 months. So Tana Rabbanan, kartzanim v'zagim shelo yikachavim, lachen if they're moist asurin, because there's still yain in there. That is yain yesach, or it's tam yain. But yeveshim, if they're completely dried out, no moisture left in them, mutter. Hainu lachem, hainu yeveshim. Amar B'Yudah Mishmol. Lachem is called Yud Beis Chodesh. Yeveshim is la'achar Yud Beis Chodesh. Once it sat there for 12 months, it's completely dried out. It might break the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Bar Chana Amar B'Yochanan. Kishehein asurin, asurin afilu b'hanam. When the chartzanim are usher up to 12 months, there's still some moisture in them. They're not only usher b'achila, they're usher b'hana as well. They have it in a regular stam yain. Stam yain is usher b'hana. After 12 months, when these chatzanim and zagam are mutter nafilu b'achila, you're even allowed to eat them. Rab Zvit, Hai Durdaya the Chamra Darmoi. Rashi says Durdaya are shmorim of goyish wine. Bosor Tresar Yache Shata Shorim. Once they're already 12 months old, they're mutter, they're dried out. They're like the chatzanim and the zagam of our Mishnah. Rab Chaviva Berei Rava. Hani Gulfe, if you buy a jug or a barrel, some type of receptacle, How does the article touch gulfi? Jugs of goyim, so they absorbed with wine of the goyim. Bazo tresa yachi shata shari. You leave them for 12 months, they'll be mutter. Rab Chaviva said, Ani avta, turning on top of base. Ani avta the tayi, to Rashi's avta are chemes me or av. It's a flask made out of hide, and they were called butin, boot, and they belong to tayi, which are those Arab merchants. So Rashi says, how are these flasks used? They would carry their wine in it, and they would have long travel, so they would keep wine in there. Even though they drank out of it, so it kept on getting emptied, it's still considered a long-term storage, because as soon as they empty out with wine, by the next rest area, they fill it up again. So this flask, although it's constantly emptied out, and you don't leave a specific wine there for a long time, but they're always full of wine. Therefore, it's considered machnis l'kiyum as if it's a long-term storage. That's why they need 12 months. Because we learned earlier about the flasks, they don't absorb so much. But these are considered machnis l'kiyum. Now, if you remember, yesterday we had a discussion, is the issue with the flask because it's only there for short term, and if it's there for long term, then you're going to have to kasher it properly. But we had another shot that it was told how absorbent it was. So I guess Rashi is working with the fact that it's only used for short term. It's still considered long term because it always is full of wine. Hani Pritzani Daramoy. Pritzani Daramoy Rashi are psoilish shalanofim. So it's also some type of seed, shell, whatever it is. It's the part of the grape that you throw out. If it sits there and dries out for 12 months, it's mutter. These jugs, shchimi v'uchmi, if they're black or white, I'm not sure exactly what these are. Again, they're only going to be mutter after 12 months. Is shchimi a color or is shchimi a type of soil that it's made out of? Shchimi is red and uchmi is what? Black? Okay. Talk to more about it. The hamurais. So murais, we touched was it's made out of the insides of the fish, and it's mixed with oil and flour. It's some type of dish that's made out of fish. Taner Rabbanan. Moirais uman. Even though moirais of a balabas is osir, it's osir bana. It's just like yain nesach because it has ingredients of wine. That's if you buy it from a standard homemaker. But if you buy it in the store from a professional maker of murais, then it's mutter. So like Uncle Ben's murais, if you bought it from a professionally packaged way, it's mutter. You know why? You know why? Zokt Rashi. Mutter, because murais of the midagim tameim. You don't have to be concerned that they used non-kosher fish because it doesn't work for the recipe. So if you're buying it from a professional, of course he's only going to do it right. He's not going to make artificial murais. He's going to make the real thing. So you know he could only have used kosher fish. What about wine? Well, maybe he mixed in wine. When we chamra kasridula, it would normally be usher if you bought it from a balabayis because he might mix wine into it. But for someone who's making it professionally, someone who's packaging it, he's making it for commercial sale. The would never mix wine into his murais. Like we're shortly going to explain. These insides of the fish that the murais is based on are very fatty the first time you soak them in water. And the second time you soak them in water, they have a lot of flavor and fat that they'll give off into the water, and therefore putting wine into it will actually mess it up. So if it's commercially made, they know what they're doing, they would never mix wine into it. If it was the first soaking of these kishkis of the fish, or the second soaking of these kishkis of the fish. So Reb Chanina ben Gamliel I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gamliel, Oimer, Mishum Rab Chanina ben Gamliel, Av Chilek Uman is mutter. So to a dish that's called Chilek is also mutter if you buy it from a professional producer. What is Chilek? Rashi says, Min Dogim Tayrim. It's like a small fish, like a small sardine or minnow that's kosher. Visulchanishman, that's the name of the fish. Or Vishultanis, I think that's a tough. Vishultanishman, Kedafarish to come on Beperkin. With the Katnusoi, when they're very young, Ein loy snapper vekaskeskas. They don't have simonim. So it doesn't look like a kosher fish, but they're kosher because when they grow older, these fish develop fins and scales. But also lagadalachazman. So because of that, it looks like a tray from the fish and could therefore be mixed with a tray from the fish. These types of fish that don't have simonim, also they're usher if you buy them from a regular guy, not a professional. Also mean dogam katanim. The nimka haba biyachad. You usually buy them in bulk. They're usher. Why is it also to buy them from a regular homemaker guy? Ervuna is a treifa fish that looks similar to this kosher fish called chilek. Dogam tameim doimin la. They come up in the same net. They look the same, and they'll be packaged together if you're buying them from a standard homeowner. But if it's a professionally produced fish, the experts, the professional fisheries, are going to make sure that their tuna is dolphin proof, right? There's such a thing called dolphin proof to make sure no tray for meat got into it. So if they're selling chilek, it's going to be pure chilek. Now, it's not because there was an FDA that inspected your food and would find them if there were something mixed into it. No, the reason why they wouldn't want, professional producers wouldn't want the ervuna mixed into it is because it doesn't taste as good. It'll mess it up. It'll destroy the entire batch. So therefore, a professional will be able to make sure that there's no treifa min mixed into it. So therefore, avchilak uman is mutter. Tani avimai bereder abavo murais uman mutter who tani lavhu amarla. He explained it. He qualified it. That's only palm rishon v'sheni mutter shlishim aser. The third time they soak these kishkis, then it's also to buy even from a professional. My timer palm rishon v'sheni did not for shumnayu. They're very fatty. They give off a lot of flavor into the water that they're soaked in. They don't need to put wine into it, and they won't because it messes it up, as Rashi said. But once they're soaking these innards the third time, they're not extracting enough flavor, so they have to add onion soup mix to it. They have to add chamer to it. Now, obviously, when you buy this, you must be able to easily tell if it's from the first or second soaking. When you buy a bottle of murais, how are you going to know if it's from the first soaking, from the second soaking, from the third soaking? So it must be obvious that you could tell, because otherwise, what does it help you to know that distinction? Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. Hu arba du muraisa. There was a whole boatload of murais that came to the port. They were unloading it, and the oilam in the city wanted to know, can we buy this murais? It's from a guy. It came to the port of Aku. And what happened was, as soon as it arrived to port, before there was any chance to tamper with the cargo, he set up shomrim to make sure that no one will tamper with the murais. We're going to assume, and the Gemara is going to challenge that the murais, while it was on board, till it came to port, will be 100% kosher. But now that it's at port, it could be swapped out. Something could happen. So right there, to make sure it would stay kosher, Reb Abba said, they sent a shomer there to make sure that nothing will be tampered with. Amalei Rava, or the Bach changes it to Reb Abba. Amalei Reb Abba, Ad ha'idna manotu. They asked Reb Abba, now you're sending up a shomer? It was traveling, it was on the route. We have no idea the origins of this murais. So now you're creating a mashgiach. What good does it help? Up until now, anything could have happened to it. Amalei Ad ha'idna lamai nechashla. There's no concern. Why? If you want to suggest that we should be concerned that maybe someone mixed wine into it, that's not a concern. Why? Because, let's see Rashi over here. Because kista de murais is beluma. Kista was a measurement. let's say a liter of murais cost one lum. Lum was an amount of money, and kista the chamra bedalad lume. So wine liter for liter is worth 4 times the value of murais. So nobody in their right mind would dilute murais with wine. You dilute a product with a less expensive product, not a more expensive product. So I don't need to worry that that's what happened. So since I don't have to worry that anything happened on the ship, I'm only setting up a shomer right now. I'm sorry?
Wine is expensive only.
Well, we're middle of the Gemara. You're jumping ahead. Amar B'Yirmel Zara Dilma Adi Ditzur Asu the Shavu Chamra. Maybe the ship, you don't know what route the ship came along. Maybe the ship, before it stopped off in Aku, it stopped off in Sur, where wine is cheap. So you do need to be worried that they mixed wine into it earlier, before it arrived to the port of Aku. On Malay, there's no way it could have stopped off in the port of Tsur along the way. Because Hasami Kulay Ufashurika, the waters are treacherous if you come through Tsur. I guess there were different routes for these boats to arrive. The water would be treacherous there, and there's no way this ship would have taken that route. So I don't need to worry that the boat showed up in Tsur before it came here, and in Tsur there's a likelihood that wine could have been mixed into it, because in Tsur wine is cheap. But here wine is expensive, so we're not concerned. Okay. I think that's what you were referring to.
Not here. Where the boat was coming from, it was expensive. So we're not worried that they did it in the past.
Oh, I'm
now
sorry.
That it came to Akro, where wine
Well, it's cheap. Here it could be a problem. Okay.
Maybe in the middle of the way, they're cheap also.
So where it was made and along the way, wine would have been expensive. That's where there's no shash. So that answers why Ado Ida Manatra, no one needed to watch it, because we don't have to worry that they would have mixed wine into it. Oh, shkayach, for correcting me. And the only place where wine was cheaper was in Tsur, but there's no way the boat came via Tsur, because the waterways were treacherous. I like boating, so I like trying to understand what it means, why they are treacherous. So Rashi says, "Ikule for sure, ika." What? Like Simcha. Right. So it says, "Ma'im shalchen al akalason." The water that goes crooked, like I'm not sure what that means, unless it's like rapids. I don't even know what means ma'im shalchen al akalason. And for sure, mishlogim nivshar not svasamayim. That I understand. There's a current coming off because the snow's melting, but I don't know what akalason means. There's whirlpools there. So those are dangerous for ships to travel through. So we learned that Nike cheese is not allowed because they're into transgender. Nike cheese is not allowed. We said because we actually had Rashi in the Mishnah said that they smear it with fat of a non-kosher animal, but that's not what it says over here. So what does it say over here? What they used to use the keva of animals to set the cheese, because the keva of an animal, one of the stomachs, have enzymes in them that causes the milk to curdle. And the problem is, most of the calves in that city, in Unaiki, were shechted for avodas kechavim. So now you're stelling the cheese, you're starting the cheese process in the stomach of an animal that belongs to avodah zarah. So frank the Gemara, my area roiva golem. Why are we only answering cheese? Because roiva golem are avodah zarah. Even if there's only a miut of a golem that are shechted avodah zarah, wouldn't that be enough to answer the cheese anyway? The Reb Meir chayish lemiuta. Reb Meir holds that even a miut you have to be concerned about. So why didn't the Gemara say there's a miut of cheeses that would have been set in caves of animals that were avodah zarah? Because of that, you can't eat cheese. I'll tell you why. Because if you're going to say that roiv calves are shechted l'avodah zarah, then you could say ikamiyut. Then we'll still only end up with a miyut. Why? Because they don't only use calves' stomachs to start the cheese process. There's many other animals, cows and goats, that they use their stomachs as well. So if roiv of the agolim are for sure avodah zarah, then even though there's many other animals that will outnumber the kavus of Isser, there's still at least a miyut. And Reb Meir holds you're chayish l'miyuta, but you're not chayish to miyuta dimiyuta. So if roiv agolim or avodah zarah, it's still only a miyut because of all the different kavus out there that are not even of a golem at all. Eliyahu miyut, if you're going to say even by a golem it's only a miyut, and all of the agolim are a miyut compared to the stomachs of other animals that are available in which they use to create cheese. Kivanika roiv agolim the einish chatam lavodah zarah. And vikanami shar behemois, the einish chatam lavodah chavim, havale miyuta dimiyuta. That's already a much, much smaller ratio compared to all of the different kavers that are used. Even your mayor wouldn't answer. So you need at least a roiv kavers of a golem or a zarah, so that when you look at the whole big picture, you have at least a miyut. And that's why we answer the cheese of a goy. Amar le Rab Shimon ben Elyakim, Rab Shimon ben Lakish. Ki nishchat lavodah kachavim, my happen. What is the big deal if it was nishchat lavodah zarah? Now, if you remember, this is the kasha that Rabbi Shmuel asked to Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Yeshua changed the subject. And he asked him, how do you pronounce, it was Kiyofa de Doich Miyayin, right? So we never got an answer to that question. The Gemara is raising that question again. Well, Atu de Shuri, you yourself said that if it's Shechted Avodah Zarah, it shouldn't be a problem. Why? The Itmar HaShoichet Es HaBehema Lizrak Doma Lavodas Kachavim. If you shecht an animal to do the zrika to avoid kachavim, or lahakter chelba lavoid kachavim, or to be makter schela lavoid kachavim. Rabbi Yochanan Amar asura, it's asur. Why? Because kasavar mechashvin me'avoida lavoida. Even though the shechita itself was not l'shem avodah zarah, but when he did the shechita, he had intended to spritz the blood, or he had intended to be makter the chela of lavodah zarah, that would asur. V'afinon chutz mipnim, and we learn chutz mipnim. We know that pigel, which is pnim, pigel is a carbon to the Rebbeinu Shloim. If you shecht it, l'shem, the proper kavanas for the carbon, but you had in mind that you're going to spritz the blood, chutz l'zmanai or chutz l'mkoimai, that passes the whole carbon, it becomes pigel. So that's called mechashvim me'avodah l'avodah. I'm doing an avodah now. The avodah that I'm doing now, I have the perfect kavanah for. But at the time that I'm doing avodah A, my kavanah is in the future. When I do avodah B, I'm going to do it wrongfully. That passes, and we'll say if it works for karbanis, it should work for avodah zarah as well. So even though during the shechita of the behema you had in mind to do the zvicha, you had in mind to do the haktara or the zrika for the avodah zarah, that's enough to asr it. Rabbi Shimon Lakish muteres. Rabbi Shimon Lakish says there's no din of pigel by avodah zarah. By avodah zarah, if you do it l'avodah zarah, it's l'avodah zarah. If you don't do it l'avodah zarah, it's not l'avodah zarah. It doesn't have the lom d'shemaseches vachim that if you shechted it, not l'avodah zarah, but you had in mind you can do zrika l'avodah zarah that answers. It doesn't work that way by avodah zarah. So the problem is what he's trying to say is Rabbi Shimon Lakish is saying that there shouldn't be a problem here at all. Amar lei, so he answered back, Tarminach Shaitav, so it's the Zan gebenched. What a beautiful thing you're saying. You have a good kasha. So Tarminach Shaitav, Rashi teaches literally as Yorim Mazla. Your Mazla should raise you up. No, so it's the Zan gebenched. The case is, I'm sorry? That's right. You know, it's a Zan gebenched. Basically, when someone asks a kasha and his Rebbe wants to slug him up, he'll say, it's a Zan gebenched, but you're making a mistake. But Omer, the Gemar Zicha, who uvda. It's when he said we're talking about an animal that was shechted. So the Gemara's assumption was, asking the kasha, is a behemoth that shechted l'avodah zarah wasn't shechted l'avodah zarah. It was shechted to spritz its dam l'avodah zarah. It was shechted to be makter tzchel l'avodah zarah. And Tosfos asks, why would you have such an assumption? Why wouldn't you assume you're shechting l'avodah zarah? So Tosfos, because that wasn't the norm. The norm was that the haktara was for avodah zarah, or the zrika was for avodah zarah. So the default is that the shechita was not l'avodah zarah. If the shechita was not l'avodah zarah, only the zrika or the haktara, well, the stomach that you're not makter never had any exposure to avodah zarah at all. So why should it be a problem? The stomach should never have a problem because the stomach comes after the shechita. The shechita was a perfectly kosher shechita, and the haktara they did on a different part of the animal. So why would there be a problem at all with the stomach? So Dr. Gemara, the case is when the guy who shechted specifically said, "I want to shech l'avodah zarah." So if you want to shech l'avodah zarah, that actually is going to make the whole animal avodah zarah, even the keva, and that's why it was a problem. Okay, Gavaltic. As Rashi says, even though it might not be the norm, he said in his heart, I want the shchita to be l'avodah zarah. The mitzvah there, everybody has to agree that it's also. That's not machashmi avodah l'avodah. The actual avodah that you did of zvicha is l'avodah zarah. Therefore, have avodah chashuva, kizrika, ulhachi nakat gemar zvicha. So why is the lashon Gemara the gemar zvicha avovda? Why did the Gemara say it's speaking where he spoke out v'zvicha avovda? So Rashi is the reason why he uses gemar zvicha is because we hold like Rishlokish who holds ein l'shchita elo l'basayif. So that's why you use a lashon of the gemar zvicha. And Tosfos says a different reason. Tosfos says is because one second he says the norm was of Tosfos that when they shechted bedavke for the to do this rika or to do the aktara, but here since he's trying to show that I'm not doing what's the norm, therefore he said b'gemar zvicha below zvicha atzma. Okay, talk to Gemara weiter. So now we have a problem with these cheeses that are from goyim because the goyim shech the animals l'avodah zarah, and when they shech them l'avodah zarah, everything in it is avodah zarah, and now the cheese that was made in the keva was made in the keva of avodah zarah. I'm going to read up. Shalosh Rabbi Shmuel. So now we're going back to the Mishnah where Rabbi Shmuel challenged the question: what if you did it in the stomach of hektish? It wouldn't be a problem because the garbage in the stomach is not really considered kadosh. It's not really part of the animal. Yet by avodah zarah, you're considering it part of the animal, and that will aser. That was the question that was asked. Amar back to boy Amarav. Hamakadosh beperesh shara niska. You have a shara niska which is also bano, and you took the excrement of the shara niska that was inside the animal, and you were makadosh a lady with it. I mean, that's a great way to start off a marriage, being makadosher with a bag of dung. But in those days, I guess it had some value. So if someone's makadosh a woman with the dung of a shara niska.
That was the shit up that said in the picture of the
Mikudeshes. The kedusha will work. Why? Because that's not part of the animal. Even if you extract something from the animal, normally the animal of a shara niska, it's also mano. But if you took the dung out of its stomach, you cut it open, took the dung out of its stomach, that's not included in the Israel. But the perish egle avodas kachavim ein mukudeshes. But the same dung that you took out of the animal of avodah zarah would be also bana, and it wouldn't be a good kedusha. What's the reason for this? There's a pasuk that actually indicates this distinction between isuri and regular isuri and the isuri of avodah zarah, and the svar as well. I'm sorry. Right, so the question is, why is it not Osher Bana? It's obviously not considered part of the Shara Niskal, and it's not Osher Bana. Not at all problem. Why? What's the difference if it's Osher Bana al Shara Niskal, or it's Osher Bana al Avodah Zarah? It's either Osher or not Osher. Why is there a distinction? So Zok to Gemara, Ibasem is Svara. The Svara is very simple. They want bedafka, even the garbage inside the stomach of the animal to be part of the carbon. You know why? If the animal is full of dung, it also looks bigger. So it's a more respectful carbon that they're offering up to the Avodah Zarah. So that's why the dung is also part of the Avodah Zarah, because the dung is also part of what's serving the Avodah Zarah, because it makes the whole animal look more full. If it's Israel enough, look, nobody cares about the dung. Not part of it. So therefore, there's no value to it. It's not part of it. So that's why by the Avodah Zarah, it is part of the animal, but by the Shor Yisrael, it's not. But there's also a pasuk to support this. So when you're talking about Avodah Zarah, that they're taking animals from the goyim from the spoils of a war, don't take anything, even the perish, even the feces inside the animal, don't touch. When it comes to Shor and Isko, it says Shokal Yishokal Ashor, V'lo Besaroi. Dafka the Bosar will have an Isra no, Besaroi also appear Shemuteris. Amarava, Tarvayu Teninu. We actually know these both halachas. We can be medayik them, we can extract them from a Mishnah itself. Because in our Mishnah, what was the answer given why the keva, the givina of an akum is also the pnei amidin bekevas nevela, right? The Gemara said there are mamid bekevas nevela. The kamahaderle, and the Gemara asked, "V'aloi kevas oila chamur bekevas nevela." Kevas oila should be more chamur, it's kochim than stamalav of nevela. And we said that by kevas kochim, it's going to be mutter, right? That was the question that Rabbi Shmuel asked Rabbi Yeshua. Michlal, the Surah Hana, Daru Pershayu. From the fact that even if it's the keva of a carbon oila, it's still mutter. You see that even though it's also bana al hektish, the stuff in the stomach, the contents of the stomach, is not part of the Isra Hana. So if that's the case, then why should the nevela? Why should the kevish nevela be a problem? And then when the Gemara said no, it's not because of kevas nevela, it's because of kevas eglei avodas kechavim. And then he asked him back, if that's the case, if it's also about Zara, im kein lama lo yasrua bahana. So you see clearly from the shackle of Atari in the Mishnah that there's a distinction between the garbage inside the stomach of an avodah zara, which is considered Isser Hana, and the garbage inside the stomach of an avela or kachim, which is not a problem. Mechlal da'avodas kechavim aser per shayu. So frag the Gemara, v'lahadalei. The Gemara had a question. Why is it not aser bano? If it's in the stomach of an avodah zara, and that's why you're asering the cheese to be eaten, so why isn't it aser bano as well? So the Gemara v'lahadalei. Why didn't the Tana answer a very simple teretz? Mishum de lesei li sur beinei. There's no Isra Ben in the cheese. There's no Isra Ben, and therefore, it should be mutter. Zok to Gemara, the murais l'Rabbanon. Murais, according to the Rabbanon, lo yasru bano. The Rabbanon did not aser murais of a goy bano. My timer, lav mishum the lesson l'isur beina. The only reason to explain why murais, which is also because of the wine that's mixed into it, nevertheless, it's not also bana. Why? Because since the Isra is not ben, the Rabbanon didn't aser bana. So, why didn't the Gemara use that same explanation by cheese? The reason why it's not also bana, because there's no avodah zara ben, there's nothing ben. Amri hacha kiven de ukmei kamaykim choshev like command the isil surabene. An enzyme, even though it has very little taste, and you don't see it anymore, but since an enzyme created the whole reaction and the whole curdling that created the cheese, even though it's not there, we consider that be'en. So therefore, using the concept of leseli sur beinei would not work for cheese. For murais, it would work, because wine is just one ingredient. Maybe it's a filler. It's not a significant ingredient in the product. Therefore, if it's not be'en, it won't create an isra or not. But here an enzyme is such a powerful part of the product, it caused the whole thing to happen, even though you don't see it anymore, we would still ask about no. So the kash remained, if it's because of avodah zara, why is cheese mutter bano? Okay, we'll stop here, and we'll be mamshach tomorrow.